Nothing beats the feeling of marking a deal in Salesforce as closed won, but not every deal ends up there. Jack, have you ever thought about using a closed lost to increase your strategic influence?
That seems like a way to end your career very quickly, actually. I don't think that's ever been on most people's radar, but maybe someone's.
You know what? In the conversation we had today, I had my mind bent because we heard some of these ways you can actually use a loss that you've gone all in on as a way to increase your visibility, not just in your company, but even externally. Jack, who did we talk to today?
We talked today to Lisa Jameson, who, if you don't know Lisa, she is a seasoned pre-sales professional as an individual contributor, which is why I was excited to talk to her about how she's built this strategic role for herself to be very influential and has got some great lessons, as Matthew was saying, about how to build that trust within a company, including using deals that you've lost as a way to build your own trust, which I didn't believe it at first when she started mentioning it. But by the end of it, I'm like, okay, I could see that actually working right. Like, I think there's a couple of things you got to set up first, right? You got to be doing deal reviews. We talked about all this stuff in the podcast. So there's some prerequisites, but I feel like anyone who's going, hey, I want to be a leader at my company, I don't really want to manage people, this is the episode you want to listen to.
Welcome to the PreSales Podcast. You just heard from Jack Cochran. I'm Matthew James, your other co-host. And today we have this amazing conversation. If you're someone who is ready to take that next step in your career, but doesn't know how to make the ask from your manager, stick around to the end. There's some great tips for you. Jack, anything else to add?
Nothing else. Let's get right to the content. Lisa, welcome to the PreSales Podcast. So happy to have you on here.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
We connected, I forget when we connected, but I was really impressed with sort of your perspective on this like credibility building and this concept that you don't need to be a leader like by title in order to actually effectively lead, which is great because this is our career focus for Q2 of 2026, whenever you're listening to this, but we're really focusing on careers. I'm excited for this topic because I think a lot of people are finding themselves there right now, right? A lot of how do I build influence, maybe for myself, maybe you do want to move into leadership. And so I'd love for you to kind of share a little bit of what we had talked about before. Talk us through, if you could, kind of get us started here, the specifics of how you have moved and how someone would move from being, quote unquote, just a pre-sales resource into being the person that I remember you describing it this way, the person that your VP asks, do you think we'll have a shot at this deal? How do you become that person?
Well, for the first part, you have to be doing this a long time. I'm kidding, but it comes with experience. So when I started my pre-sales career, I was really new. I'd never been in sales. I'd always been on the functional side of HR. So I'd run a payroll department. I'd been part of an HR team. I actually worked for ADP, like implementing payroll and HR, but I hadn't been in sales. So the guy who hired me, I really looked him in the eye and said, I want to work for you and I know I can do this job. And he took a chance on me. So what I did, and this was early on in the 1900s, as my kids would say, but we traveled quite a bit together. And so when we were on a plane, we would talk and I would just listen to him. And he would talk to me about like, who are the people on this deal? What are the things that you're concerned with? What are the things that we know? What are the things that we don't? So I really listened to this gentleman. And then the other thing I did is I asked to be involved in all the debrief calls. So I heard what the sales manager was asking the sales team, like, what are the questions that are being asked? So I started to think in more of a sales mode instead of how do I solve a functional problem? It's like, what is driving this particular decision? And who are the influencers? And it was a little bit easier, I'll be honest, back when we did in-person meetings. But you can tell on a Zoom call who's jumping in, who's controlling the conversation, who is asking questions online, and who is kind of directing where you're going to go to, within a product demonstration. So that was a big part of it.
Lisa, when did you know that your AEs and your leaders were starting to trust you and they were asking you, hey, what do you think our chances are? And this time they're really open to receiving your strategic input.
The time I really recognized it was when the sales guys would get an RFP and they would come to me and say, we've gotten an RFP, take a look. Now, a lot of times before that, they would just, hey, we're responding. Basically, you got the RFP and you kicked it off. So that was the first thing. And then the second thing was if there wasn't an RFP process, if we scheduled a discovery and we went through the discovery, the sales guy would say to me after the discovery, what did you think? And that way I knew that he wasn't just relying on his information or his intuition. It's like, what were the red flags that you saw? What were the areas of concern? And so those helped us to be really strategic in the deals that we worked. and continue. Like if we jumped into a deal, we jumped in like, okay, we agreed to work this, we're going to work it. So that was the time that I felt I really had their trust, that it wasn't just like, oh, here's a deal, here we go. It was like, here's a deal. What do you think?
I love that shift of, if we're going to work a deal, we're going to work a deal. When you've got that, and I feel like that can only come if the other is also true. Like if we're not working a deal, we're not working it. I feel like a lot of organizations get into the middle of, we work every deal. And so then the SEs often have to decide which deals they're going to half-ass, which deals are going to be the ones we phone in so that we can work on the other ones. But if instead you're saying, no, this is a deal we're working on because we've all agreed to it, we're all working on it, that makes everyone happy, right? The sales team knows you're putting forth full effort, and that definitely is going to be a trust building exercise, right?
Absolutely. To your point, I was able to really focus in on digging deep in discovery. If there were use cases that I could build out for those deals, I worked with our PSC team to build them so that we could really execute, as opposed to exactly what you said, showing up and, show up and throw up, which happens a lot of times if you're not strategic on the deals that you work. And I think SCs get frustrated because, hey, I know I have a deal that's a great opportunity and I don't have the time to focus on it because I'm working every deal that comes across their desk as opposed to the deals that we can actually win.
If we want to go all in on these deals, Lisa, you had told us something really interesting, that there is a strategy you can deploy to go all in on a deal where you might not feel that you have the right to win. So maybe you have an inkling that you're going to lose this deal, but you're still going all in. What do you do with that? How can that help advance you?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. One, it builds trust and credibility with your salesperson, in that they know that if you've committed to a deal, that you're going to show up, that you're going to execute, that you're going to give 100%. We had a deal where we felt like we were a really great fit when we were working with a consultant, and the consultant really was not our friend. And yet we kept showing up, we kept executing, and the sales guy kind of kept pushing back on the consultant. And, if you've ever worked with a consultant, and I'm sure you have, you don't want to go around him because that shuts a lot of doors. But he would push back and he would push back and he would push back. And we would show up every time with answers to the prospect's questions, with building trust exercises. And we were shocked when we won the deal, not because we shouldn't have won the deal, but because we had overcome so many obstacles. And they are actually a really happy customer. But I think it really came from us knowing, like, we are a good fit for you. Regardless of what this consultant is telling you, you are in our sweet spot and we can do a great job for you. And they really felt that, even though if it had been a different business, this was an ICP, this was like our ideal customer. If it had been a different industry, we might not have been as successful because we didn't have the background or success stories. But this, we knew we could win and we had the confidence. So we just went for it and we did. It was awesome. It was one of our favorite stories.
The strategy you implied there is one that I think a lot of people don't want to do. I actually got feedback once when I had tried to provide, because I hadn't built the trust that you had. I tried to provide the, hey, here are the red flags that I'm seeing in this deal. And it got back to my manager at the time. Jack doesn't want to work on this deal and doesn't want to support it. But I think it's critical to build the trust. You can be at the point of saying, here are the things we're going to have to overcome. Here are the hurdles, so that you as a sales team can all go in and do that. Because imagine that same deal, Lisa, where you hadn't done that. You hadn't approached it that way. You might not have won it. You only won it because you had taken the time to push against the hurdles and overcome them and work with the customer to earn their trust during that time. I think that's almost the only way to do it. The important part being there, which I want to go back to, we did talk about a little bit before, is on how you start to get that trust within the organization, that when I'm saying this is a problem, what I mean is, if we want to win it, we have to address the problems. Like, how do you get to that point where people can understand that that's what you're saying?
I think part of it comes from losing. There were deals that we lost, and there were reasons that we lost. And sometimes we lost because of stupid things that we did. And sometimes we lost because we were not a good fit. So if we lost, if there was a deal review, again, I asked to be involved. I'm like, let's be on the deal review. And I would call out, these were the areas that I felt like we had concerns. These are the areas that we weren't able to overcome, or sometimes even not the issues in the product. It was the consultant. Because there were certain consultancies that were not our friend. And it's like, we are cannon fodder every time they bring us in, but they're going to bring you in. And so you have to go back and say, these 5 deals, we worked, we executed, we did everything we needed to do, and we still lost. So do we want to continue to engage? That's kind of where you have to lose a few times. Or on the flip side, if you win, I would say, these are the reasons why I felt like we won. Now, of course, the sales guy is going to say we won because we're awesome. But I also could come in and say, strategically, this was the person that we had to connect with. These were the issues that we were able to really kind of put the FUD for our competitors and build that credibility. So I do think it comes with experience and giving feedback, like having the courage to jump in and say, this is how I feel.
What's interesting is those deal reviews. I don't know if you've seen this, Matthew, or even Lisa. I don't know if you've seen this. I've worked at organizations that didn't do deal reviews for won or lost deals. And I feel like what you're saying, Lisa, is, hey, when you do the deal reviews, do this. But let's pump the brakes a little bit. If your organization doesn't do deal reviews, this can't happen at all, right?
I agree. And if you don't do the deal reviews, do them casually when you get a chance. So if you get a chance to have a weekly one-on-one with your sales guy or a monthly one-on-one with the sales manager, say, hey, I want to talk a little bit about this deal. If you want to become a trusted advisor, you got to have the courage to stand up, but have your facts, have specific examples, because the feelings are good. And we all trust our feelings a little bit in selling, but I think it's more important to say, these were the 5 things that we called out before we engaged of areas of concern. And these were the reasons that we lost. So those kind of can help you build the credibility. And real life example, like we got an RFP and it was for somebody who had a heavy government contract requirements and we didn't do it. It was like, we are never going to win this deal because we don't do it. And so 5 years ago, we would have gone after that deal and lost. And this time, we're like, no, we're not going to do it. And so we actually took a different deal, a different opportunity that we won. So those are part of the challenges that come as well.
I recently put myself out there a little bit and kind of put together a hypothesis of one of the deals that we were working on, put this in front of our sales leadership. And they gave me some great feedback on a couple of the points where my hypothesis needed to be updated with some new information. Now, I felt lucky because I know that we've got a really good relationship with our sales leadership. But Lisa, what does that look like if you're trying to assess how trusted are we right now as a pre-sales organization from sales leadership? And what are the things that people should be looking out for when they approach leadership with a conversation like that?
So a couple things. I think the first thing is, does sales leadership engage you when you are in meetings? Do they ask for pre-sales feedback on deals? If they don't, then get your leader to say, hey, we'd like to have a voice. The second thing is, when you get the opportunity to give feedback, don't be negative. That's not the job here. The job is to figure out why we lost and what were the challenges. Now, there are certain things that might be product related that we're never going to fix. I can talk about development. We were all in pre-sales. We can all scream about development till we're blue in the face. It's real. So you have to go back and say, these were the challenges that we couldn't overcome. And then come with a solution. So it might be, hey, this isn't an industry that we play well in unless we are engaging a partner early on for a certain, like, prevailing wages. It's ugly. It's hard. Not very many people do it well. If that's part of your deal, you better have a partner that you're bringing in, because that builds credibility. Whereas if you're scrambling at the end to find a solution. So those are some of the things I feel like when you're talking to sales leadership, come with a solution, come with a suggestion, and then also kind of know what your ICP is. Most sales guys and sales managers don't want to waste their time on deals they can't win, but they need to know why specifically this is a problem. Not, well, we don't want to do that because we never do this. It's like, this is the specific problem that causes our issue.
You gave a really good example there on what you said was prevailing wages, because it sounds like you could interpret that from a certain point of view as, look, we just don't win here. And you could end your sentence there. Guess what? As we get further in our pre-sales careers, we realize that the world really is our oyster. If you had an unlimited amount of resources, you can solve nearly any challenge. And you've brought in this external party, right? So a lot of the times we're constrained by just what our team can do right now. Our roadmap is completely blocked for the next 3 quarters. There are always creative solutions that we can go to, at least to point them out, right? Where did you learn to do that? Because I, as a younger SE, definitely felt guilty of saying, look, the API just doesn't do that right now. Sorry.
So I think it comes with experience, and I'll give a real world example. So, I worked with Ultimate Software for years, and then a new player came on the field. I'm not going to name them, but they didn't even have payroll, and we were losing to them. We were losing to them because they came in and they solved bigger problems than we were solving. We were really good at the tactical. They were really good at the C-level conversations. And so we had to go back to the drawing board a little bit. The other thing is, as we started looking at who are our ICPs, what do we define as an ICP? Where is a partner that can help us? And so some of that, again, is connecting with your network. For example, there's a new company that just started implementing prevailing wages. And so I kind of follow on LinkedIn. Who is this individual? What is the company that they're doing? So leverage your network. The PSC is a great place to go in and see who are the members and see if they're part of, I'll give a real world example. We didn't have like a mass hiring solution. So if we had a customer that had hired 10,000 people in 2 weeks to cover a summer season, we didn't do that well. And instead of pretending that we did, we started leveraging partners. So it was really about talking to your coworkers, leverage your team, leverage your network, and stay on LinkedIn. See what people are doing. Stay in the technology, Ray Wang, some of these guys. I'm on the HR side. Ray Wang is somebody that you follow, but follow the technology leaders so that when you come up against a roadblock, like you said, our API doesn't do this, at least you have in your head, hey, there might be, let's reach out and talk to 2 or 3 of these people. And it might still not work, but I feel like technology has changed so much with AI as well as the integration. I mean, AI can build integrations in hours instead of days. And so don't be afraid to lean in and kind of get creative with, I never want to promise something we can't do, but I don't want to say, well, that can't be done. That's kind of my methodology there.
I'm glad you brought up AI. It has to be brought up at some point during every podcast that we do this year, just because everyone's already thinking about it. And I think it's also critical right here when we think about especially more strategic roles, right? There's a lot of people right now who are looking at their careers going, you know what? I want to be more of a strategic influencer. I would love a strategic leadership position, especially as AI and what's happening through that and how it's changing the profession for deployed engineers or value architects or solution architects kind of getting into the solutions mix. If someone's going, you know what? I want to move into that strategic role. Like, let's say they're saying, I want to be more like Lisa. I want to do what Lisa's been doing where she can talk to the VP and tell them, these are the 3 deals that we're not going to win. Here's the direction we want to move. Like, I want to be that person in my company. Is that something that you can say, hey, is this a valid senior position? How do you approach within your organization to say, no, I don't want to move into management. I want to move into more of a strategic role. And how do you pitch that idea?
The first thing is you need to be good at your day job. You have to have built some credibility that you're a trusted advisor to your salespeople, that they trust that when you show up, you know the product and you know how to sell. I think that's the first thing. This isn't a senior role that you walk into. Secondarily, you need to build some expertise. And what I mean by that is, my background was payroll. I kind of became the payroll queen by default, but I leaned in. Because payroll's ugly. It's hard. It's not fun. And so I leaned in and I made sure that if there were laws that were changing as the product grew, I was in the weeds. I was testing. I knew the information. I understood how do we solve for this and what's the business pain. So you really need to lean into some expertise. And then the next thing is jump in and help. I never wanted to be a manager. I was a manager very early in my career and I realized I didn't enjoy it, but I loved being a mentor. I loved helping with deals. And so whenever there was a need, I raised my hand and I said, can you help? Yeah, absolutely. So when new people started, I mentored them. And then when I got to kind of that point in my career where I was like, if I have to do another 2,500 man payroll demo, I'm going to lose it. But I had the credibility to go to my boss and say, I'm not finding this satisfactory anymore. This is not challenging for me anymore. And he said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, well, this is what I want to do. And God bless Ultimate Software. They built a role that allowed me to move into it. And it was so fun. They brought me on big deals. So whenever there was a big opportunity, I was brought in. I had one time where we had a call and the senior VP of sales called me and he said, Lisa, do you think we should pursue this deal? I said, no. And he said, well, why? And I said, because they have a requirement that we're never going to meet. We don't have the development resources. There's not a partner. And it was one of those things I wanted to work the deal. It was personally a deal that I would have loved to, but bought a ton of credibility there. And then the next opportunity that came up, it's like, how do we jump in, right? If you can do it, do it. My modus operandi is I never stop learning the product. And even now, like starting in a new role, I love the technology. So you kind of have to have a little bit of that techie. And AI cannot solve every problem. And don't get me wrong, I think AI is really valuable. So if you want to become an expert and you don't know where to start, use AI to help you understand some of those deeper topics, but then go deeper. Understand how your product supports those topics. Understand what's on your roadmap for those topics. Understand what your competition is doing for those topics. So use AI to help you learn, but I kind of feel like for our job, especially when you have that expertise and that connection with people, people are going to want to buy from people. You can't just be a robot, right? You can't just do your demo and then be done. You have to be able to lean in to really focus on their challenges and solve them with real world solutions. And they'll know they can trust you because of that expertise.
I think that everything you're saying is spot on. And I'm just imagining that conversation you said you had where you walk up to your VP or senior leader and you say, this really isn't doing it for me anymore. Imagine if you hadn't built that trust first. They'd say, okay, so are you leaving? Where they really wouldn't be putting in the effort to keep you there. But if you've proven that you're someone that is valuable, that you're an expert, that's where the conversation is different, where you shouldn't be afraid of having that conversation of, I need a new role and I want it to be here and you want it to be here. So what can we do?
Exactly. You've got to do the work. My kids are in college right now and some of them are like, this is boring. This is dull. I'm like, you got to put in the work. This is the part where you learn to work. And then you get the payoff and you get the opportunities, but it's very rare for you to be able to skip the hard work. Because my son is like, well, you have this great career. And I'm like, I worked really, really hard for this career.
They didn't hand it to me.
I've heard this one before.
I didn't have this out of college.
Yeah, it was 25 years of, really, I was 20 years into my career at Ultimate when I went to my boss and said, I need a change for me to be able to stay and be happy and engaged. But I had 20 years of being a team player, of being someone that could be relied on. And they knew that I could be successful in this new role because I'd shown it before. And for me, and I think for everybody, pre-sales has changed. I don't know what the tenure is now, the average tenure. I'm probably a unicorn in that I've stayed at, I'm in a new company, but my old company, I was there for quite some time. But I think if you see yourself as an IC, which I love being the IC role, I love it. It's been perfect for me and my personality. Then you got to invest some time moving from company to company. You'll never get to that strategic advisor if you're not willing. So find a place that fits, find a role and a team where you feel like, hey, this is going to work. These are people I can work with. And then dig in through the hard parts to get to the part where you get to have a little bit more of a say and your career opens up into things that you never really expected. I've been shocked and amazed by the opportunities I've been given just because I leaned in during those hard times to become that expert and did the work so that my team could trust me and know that, hey, she's going to show up every time. And even this new role, I was hired by somebody I worked for before. And it was because he knew me and he knew he could trust me. And so that brought that credibility. So even if you don't stay, you build that by doing it and then you have opportunities open up for you.
I want to ask this one question before we move to our final section of the podcast. Pre-sales really is the profession where you can create the role that you want. Lisa, for the people who are ready for that, maybe ready to make that ask, can you give them an idea of specifically what did you ask for in that next role that you knew you were going to be really good at?
So what I did is I sat down with my boss and he said, well, what do you want and what do you not want? And I said, well, I'm frustrated because it seems like I'm doing the same demo over and over again, new salespeople. And I was a little frustrated. I said, I really want to work on the complex deals. I like having to dig in solution. I want to work for deals where I've got to build out a proof that this is going to work. I also talked about that I really enjoyed mentoring. So that's kind of, look at your job and where you are. What are the things that you're good at? What are the things that you enjoy? And how do they add value to the team? Because that's got to be the kicker, right? Your satisfaction has got to lead to better outcomes for the team. Again, I had a reputation for jumping in. Like I will help whenever I can, however I can. And I had been mentoring some of the new teammates. So if there are opportunities for you to do those things, offer. Just say, hey, how can I help? What are the things that you need? Instead of waiting for someone to come to you, you've got to be a little bit of aggressive if these are things that you want to do. So I just went in and said, hey, these are the things that I really like. These are the things that I feel like I've been really valuable at, and I have proof statements and then I have emails from the sales teams. I have, awards that I've won that are related to this. So I had a value statement and then I could come in and say, and this is how I want to help add value. The nice thing is that after a year in that role, I came back and I said, okay, I was engaged in these 7 deals that I wouldn't have been engaged in otherwise because they were high profile and I partnered. I won't get into the comp, but the comp wasn't the most important thing for me. So we structured my comp that it didn't impact the primary AC on the deal. But I was able to come back in and say, we won these deals because I was engaged. And so the next year they are like, okay. And then it kind of got to the point where more opportunities opened up. So I was working with our pre-sales enablement team. So I was building out data. If there was any complex payroll, I was building out the calculations. So it was a perfect job for me. I loved it. But Matthew, to your point, really make a list of what are the things that I'm good at? What are the things that I enjoy? Go find the proof points of, hey, these are deals where I was engaged in this way. Hey, this is a way that I help the team this way. I'd like to continue to do that more. So that way you can sell the value, because my role didn't exist until they made it for me. But I had enough credibility for them to say, we can sell the value of this to the sales team. We can sell the value of this to the company and let her take this role, because otherwise I was going to leave. You don't want to threaten leaving if you're not ready to do it. But on the flip side, I really think that you have to know what you're good at. And then also, there were certain times I did deals I didn't really want to do, but that was the role I took on. And so sometimes that meant I had to do the heavy lifting, and I never complained about it because, guess what you wished for? You got it.
It's exactly what you had asked for. Exactly. Say someone's like, hey, I like Lisa. I want to pick her brain some more. What's the best way for someone to get in touch with you?
So the best way to get in touch with me is you can email me, and my email is lisa.jameson@darwinbox.com, all one word. Or you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, and it's Lisa Jameson, and I'm at Darwin Box. So if you find a Lisa Jameson at Darwin Box, that is my LinkedIn, and I would love to connect.
Perfect. And final question. This can be something that maybe we talked about, maybe something that we didn't. I have a feeling there's a lot more conversation that we could be having here. What's your final thought that you want to leave someone with coming out of the podcast episode today?
I always tell people that pre-sales is the best job in tech. And I really believe that. So if you're going to make your career in pre-sales, lean in, have fun, learn, become a technology geek, try new things, and ask questions and jump in to help. Because I promise you, if you do those things, you will find your niche, and you will find a way to really have a ton of fun doing this job. And I think it's one of the most rewarding careers out there. And a lot of people don't know how lucky they are to be in this role.
Lisa, it's been a pleasure. I agree. I definitely think it's the best job in tech. But thanks so much for being here, for sharing your insights. And we'll talk to you soon at some future events. So thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the PreSales podcast by PreSales Collective. Did you know that we also post on the PreSales Collective blog following each episode? Head there to read through information on shows you might have missed or find another past episode to listen to. For more information on the PreSales podcast itself and to listen to those past episodes, visit presalescollective.com/podcast.